All right, so we are getting close to the NFL draft, trying to do some draft content. So I want to take some time to talk about not just Isaiah Simmons, but a bigger conversation about these tweeners. And so I have a number of draft philosophies. If you've been following any of my draft content for a number of time, you've heard some of them. And one of my biggest draft philosophies is that versatility equals value. And that's something that I've stuck with for a while and believe in to a certain extent. But I will tell you what really kicked it off, this thought process, as far as my questioning of that philosophy. Watching the 49ers in the Super Bowl and watching them go against Pat Mahomes, a lot of people, they're just like, hey, I'm tired of Tom Brady. They were tired of the Seahawks. They were like, we just want to see something new. And you get lost in the hype thinking that it's something new that you're watching. And it's really not. Like, I sat down doing the Mahomes tape, going over, the film, and you realize that on both sides, whether it's Mahomes or whether it's the 49ers defense, it's the same principles you always knew in football. And one of those things for defense is that do your job. I know people hate the Patriots, they hate Belichick, but that's really what it is. Like, the idea of like somebody making a couple splash highlight plays sounds cool. But what's really the winning formula is everybody understanding what their role is, not running around making a heroic throw, not going rogue and blitzing when you're not supposed to, not jumping a pass. Like, what really wins is steady football, assignment football. And so I'm watching the 49ers, and again, I did completions and incompletions. So I'm looking at what worked against them, what didn't work. And overall, you just realize as the defense, like that top unit, obviously there's a lot of talent, but there's people doing their job. And there's a number of tweeners on that defense that are doing their job. And so, and there's one big one, Solomon Thomas, that unfortunately has kind of a negative connotation to him. But anyway, this kicked off the idea, and I'm like, you know what, as a coach, as somebody that does it, as somebody that's been around it, yes, versatility is nice, especially on the lower levels. But when you get to football in the NFL, it is so specific. It is very highly, elite at your position, is very high level execution. And so to execute at a point where it is your main job and it's $1 billion industry, you don't just run out there and do the slash thing like Cordell Stewart and, I'm a running back today, or I'm a receiver today, or I'm a D-back today. You don't get to do that. College, there's definitely a lot more of that, but in the NFL, you just can't do that. To be elite at your position, you really have to work extremely hard all around the clock. And so that got me thinking about Isaiah Simmons. I mean, I've been thinking about this for a while. A lot of people got questions about it. And every year, not this high of a prospect, but every year we seem to have a prospect that is polarizing to this way. And the more I think about it, is there's really only two routes. Isaiah Simmons is going to settle into a position, I'll say two routes. He's going to settle into a position that fits what he does and what the team needs him to do, and he'll have a decent career. Or he's going to be forced into a number of different things and end up fizzling out. And that's just what I see for him. And so I thought about this because he's not the first. I thought about all these other players, and I wrote down a long list. I have a stupid long list of players that were in similar position as prospects coming out. And so I was like, okay, let's just kind of look at what they did. But keeping in mind, like, there's a number of things you could be good at, especially in college. But in the NFL, it's not even just you as a player, but as a team, it works best when everybody understands their specific job. And so you might not utilize a player to their full extent, especially on defense, but if they can do what you want them to do, they're going to be very big contributors. In the same token, you might have a player that doesn't have a lot of talent, but you're asking them to do a specific thing, and then you are maximizing their talent. And it's just especially when it comes to defense, it's just what it pans out in this sport. It helps to be confined in a sort of way. So anyway, we got this long list, and you tell me what you think. You got Minkah Fitzpatrick, very recent, who really became high end once he got to the Steelers. A lot of people were talking about things not working out in Miami. Now, obviously, the team itself has its own issues. But people were talking about, and that's just part of the media today being 0 to 100. People was talking about him being a bust. But you got to realize coming out, he was in the slot exclusively, like a nickel corner, basically. But a big dude that's technically a safety, a guy that could play over the middle, maybe play a sub linebacker, be a nickel corner. And so it's just like, well, what is he? And as talented as he was going into the process, once we got to the draft, it's like, well, we don't know where he's going to play. So he ends up getting drafted later than people expected, goes to the Dolphins, and people start talking about bust. Then he goes to the Steelers and has a much better end of the season. Now we'll see, because it's young in his career, but it felt like he had a more defined role. And I still don't know where Minkah is. I still think he can play a number of positions, but we'll see. Leonard Floyd, Chicago Bears, my own. Remember him coming out. He had that year where he played stack linebacker. And so people were like, well, is he an edge rusher or can he move to stack linebacker? A lot of people was like, the way he's built, you got to put him on the edge. And so it was like, well, did that last year of not rushing the passer, does that affect him? Some people on the positive end were like, well, he plays so much in coverage, he's going to have a lot better IQ in coverage. And he didn't pan out to the point where we released him. Not to say that he wasn't good, and I think he's underappreciated. But overall, I think people look at the numbers, fans and some of these GMs, they look at the numbers. They didn't see him as a prolific, quote unquote, edge rusher, even though he added a lot of things elsewhere. And so they moved on from him. And you got to think and that obviously there's a question about ability, but there's still that question of, well, maybe if you would have gave him a more defined role instead of this tweener thing, maybe he would have been better. Jalen Ramsey obviously went on to be great so far, but he came out. Now he played 3 different positions. I believe his name was Bill Winters. I met him. He's a Florida State defensive guy, but he has what they call the star linebacker position, and people call it different things. And that's what Jalen played early on, which was kind of like Minkah, where it's this hybrid linebacker nickel position. And then he was a safety, and then he was a corner his last year because he said that's where the money is, and he wanted to show he can play corner. And then that's where he ended up getting drafted. And even in the draft, people were like, well, what is Jalen going to end up being? And Jalen just played regular corner and showed that he had all the intangibles. And so he focused his energy there. But again, he focused his energy to one spot. They didn't move him to the nickel. They didn't move him to safety half the time. They didn't move him to corner half the time. He just played corner. You got a long list of these running back receiver tweeners, these undersized guys. Tavon Austin out of West Virginia. A lot, and one of the first for me that was really this talk of like, we don't know what to do. This guy's in the backfield. He's doing wildcat. He's a receiver, but he's so undersized, and the Rams end up going high and getting him. You got Dexter McCluster, who went to the Chiefs, running back slot / receiver. DeAnthony Thomas, the Black Mamba, and Tyreek Hill. Obviously, you know, most of those guys, where they end up turning out, they just kind of washed out. Tyreek Hill made his noise as a returner, and then eventually through that earned his reps as a receiver, and he went on to do really good things, obviously great things as a receiver, but he had to earn that trust and that confidence to then show what he can do, because they didn't know what to do. It's like, he's super fast, so we can let him return, be a special teamer, but we don't really know where to fit him. And then eventually, once he gained trust, he showed that I'm just a receiver. Now, they obviously do some pop passes, some different things with him, but for the most part, he is a legit receiver and he thrives. Fred Warner, Solomon Thomas. I mentioned Solomon earlier. 49ers defense, the one that kicked this all off. Fred Warner, I can't even say that. Very much a tweener. Linebacker, safety, nickel, we don't know. Kind of similar to Minka, but not exactly. It was more like, this is a safety playing linebacker. We don't know what to do with him. And it was a big question about what he would do. And I think he went in the third round or something. But a lot of talent, a lot of athleticism. They end up making him pretty much a cover linebacker. And again, the 49ers, they have a defense and a team that everybody understands their role. They're not moving a bunch of people around and doing crazy stuff. They're having people understand their role. And so Fred Warner has found himself in a really good spot for a team and a defense that put him in position to say, this is what you're going to do. Yes, you might not be the best downhill guy. You might not be the biggest hitter, but you're going to add a plus in the coverage when we run, as we run these things. And when you're not covering, you're going to blitz, and we're going to do some different things with you. But you are our middle linebacker, and that's what they gave him. Solomon Thomas start to show more this year. Now you got Nick Bosa, you got Buckner, you had Buckner, you had Armstead, you had D Ford, a couple other guys. And so at first it was like, Solomon Thomas, we have no idea. He can stand up and play linebacker. He could be a 3-tech, he'd be a 5-tech. And it was just like, huge tweener. And then he didn't pan out well. And when he played well this year is when they got him into that 3-tech, which I kind of said before. But either way, they found one spot for him. They said, okay, we're going to run you rotational style at this 3-tech. Just come in and get upfield. And that's when he played his best football towards the end of this year. Christian McCaffrey, one of the few. I will give you this, because he played hell of a lot of slot receiver. And there was questions like, is he going to be an Edelman or, Wes Welker? Is he going to move to slot? And people are like, well, can he be a running back? Can he take those hits? And I think the Panthers, this was not, I wouldn't say exactly the Panthers. This was the evolution of the game at the right time for Christian McCaffrey. This is the evolution of the game where a lot of people start putting the ball to the running back in the pass game. And I think he just ended up benefiting from that. Yes, he does a little bit of lining up in the slot and all that, but for the most part, he is the running back. And they decided that, hey, he can make an impact in the pass by not lining up in the slot or a receiver. He can make an impact in the pass from the backfield. And so luckily he didn't get into this mode where you don't know where he is, a chess piece. They really just let him be a running back and be really good at what he does. Hassan Redick coming out of Temple real late, real fast linebacker. Some people thought he could be a safety. They didn't really know. Didn't pan out early, end up getting his chance with the Cardinals eventually, but just never really came on as this prolific linebacker. Or some people thought he could be a safety. A lot of people thought he could be an edge rusher. And it was that type of thing where it was like kind of the opposite of Leonard Floyd. It was like Hassan Redick is way too undersized. We can't let him go off the edge. And so we got to put him in the middle. Or some people was like, but he has so much good edge ability, we can't put him in the middle. And so it was that kind of back and forth. Jabril Peppers played linebacker that last year, was initially a safety D-back, Some people thought he could play corner. Some people was like, hey, he could be like Deion Buchanan and like he could just be a full-time linebacker, even though he's a little undersized and linebackers are smaller these days anyway. And he ended up getting drafted by the Browns, right? And they really didn't understand what to do. This was one of those situations where they really did try to chess piece him around all over the place and didn't really figure it out. Then he goes to the Giants this year, replaces what is his name? Forgive me, I can't remember his name, but no disrespect. So replaces their strong safety and has a much better year in a more defined role, I think, where they weren't trying to just move him everywhere. Because obviously he played running back too. A lot of people was like, Jabril could just play everywhere. And it was a big question of where he should go, and he ended up dropping. And actually Hassan Redick, a lot of people made a lot of hype about him moving up. He ended up dropping. Solomon Thomas, obviously they went high for him. Fred Warner dropped to the 3rd round. Jalen's a big time talent. He went high. Minka dropped a little. So a lot of these players do end up dropping. I mean, Adrian Amos went to my Chicago Bears. Box, what I would call a dog safety. You start to get these people that are in the nickel all the time. And so not really a nickel corner, but they're a dog safety. They're always in the box. And so that's kind of more of like a 4-2-5, 3-3-5 type thing. And that's what he played at Penn State that last year. And they tried to make him a free safety, and he just was nobody. Then they put him in strong safety, started letting him play in the box. He was more at home, started to do his job. Budda Baker, same thing. Undersized. We don't know if he's a deep safety. We don't know if he's a sub linebacker, if he's a nickel. Cardinals got him. Didn't really know what to do. Finally put him at home in that free safety spot, and now he is a Pro Bowler. And Josh Jones went to the Packers. Made him, and it was a question again. Big hitter at safety, maybe play linebacker, dime linebacker. Did really well for a certain package for the Packers. Then outside of that, he just fell off, and with other teams, he never caught on. He didn't really have a position. Robert Kimdichie, big polarizing player. Went to the Cardinals, again, 3-tech, 5-tech, edge rusher, really big, also explosive. We don't know. Never really caught on to one position. Shea McClellan to my Bears again. Holy crap. A Swiss Army knife of all Swiss Army knives. This man was a middle linebacker, edge rusher, DN, inside, a lot of stuff. Again, you can do that in college. And in the NFL, I thought to me he was an outside linebacker playing in space on the edge 3-4. We tried to make him a DN. We tried to make him a stack linebacker. None of those really worked. Just kind of moving him around, and I don't think we really had a plan for him. Same thing, Jonathan Bullard out of Florida. A lot of people, is he an edge rusher? Is he a DN? 4-3? What is he? I'm like, he's a 3-tech, just like Solomon Thomas. We put him in a 3-4 DN, got bigger. It just never worked out. Byron Jones went to the Cowboys, Connecticut, crazy numbers. Is he a safety? Is he a corner? We don't know. And Byron Jones, they were kind of flip-flopping him, and then they just let him be a boundary corner. Started to play a lot better. Sua Cravens and Anthony Barr, and Shaq Thompson. Let me end with those. Those are the ones I put Isaiah Thomas in that mix. Anthony Barr, again, edge rusher, kind of simple in college, but then people started talking about all these different things he could do. And he ended up going to the Vikings, stack linebacker, and he's one of the good situations. They put him, they didn't play around with him. They didn't toss him all over the place. They said, we know you can do a lot of things, but this is the position we're going to put you in, weak side linebacker, and you're going to do these things for us. And they've been consistent with that, and he grew into that position, and he's done well. Sua Cravens, very much linebacker, safety, nickel. We don't know what he is. We're going to play him all over. Start to have a little buzz with Washington, and then got hurt. which was one of the big things. But after that, just never caught on, didn't really have a position. And you went to other teams that didn't have a plan for him. Shaq Thompson. He was, oh my God, just ridiculous because he was super small and he played like full-time running back as well. And so people really didn't know what to make of Shaq Thompson. Went to the Panthers, very much like they did Thomas Davis, made him a full-time linebacker instead of a safety, and worked out really well, I think, early on. And never became anything huge, but, did his thing. And so my point is, looking at all these names, there's probably two that you can say are legit stars. Jalen Ramsey, who just had out of this world athleticism and showed you he could play corner, and from day one decided to play corner when he got to the league. Then you got Christian McCaffrey, again, early in his career, but really stuck to the running back position. And so after that, you got a lot of guys that just have decent careers or they fizzle out. And that's the path that I see for Isaiah Simmons, unfortunately, because he does have a lot of great intangibles. This is not a knock against him. And honestly, it's very different than a lot of these players. You talk about Jabril, Seward Cravens, Shaq Thompson, any of these guys. He's more in the line of Jalen Ramsey because he's not undersized. He's oversized. He's oversized for a safety. He's a good size for a linebacker. He's a good size for an edge rusher. And so he does have the size and athleticism combo. But again, it's more about the mental. People got to realize how much goes into it, whether it's, the playbook, whether it's studying film, whether it's understanding where you fit in coverage, run fits, all these different things, blitzes, play calls, audibles. It's a lot. It's a lot to know a bunch of different positions. And so my best guess is that they're just going to play him as a linebacker because that's what the league is now. You think about Devin White, you think about Deion Jones, you think about what, even to an extent, what Luke Kuechly was, but even the younger linebackers, they're just fast. Fred Warner, they fast, they play coverage, they get sideline to sideline. And, every once in a while, you could double mug the A gap. You could put him on the edge. You can do things like that. But you're just going to really have him play the middle of the field in space. You're going to have him chase down tackles and blitz every once in a while. And that's what he's going to be. But to me, it's easy to say, oh, but he can do so much more. Let's move him here in this package. And let's move him here in this package. And I mean, we saw Isaiah Simmons cover the middle of the field, deep safety. We also saw that from Minkah Fitzpatrick. But so it's tempting to say, man, he could do so much more. But I think in the NFL, you just got to give him a spot. I think you just got to give him a spot. So anyway, that's it for me. Go to the comment section. Let me know what you think about Isaiah Simmons, where he might go, what he might play, and how do you feel about the whole idea of too much versatility just making you not good at any position. So thank you for listening. Share it around, get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and yeah, thank you for listening.